What's up guys, welcome back to Fancy Goldfish Fanatics. Today we're going to be speaking all about airlifts, so make sure you stay tuned to find out more. Hey Fanatics family, welcome back. As always, check out all of those links in the description. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, check out the website, and also check out the sponsors, Star Fisheries and Jimmy Goldfish USA. Today, as I mentioned, we are going to be talking all about airlifts. Now you may think this is just another one of those boring informational videos, but I think this video is actually really important and could change a lot of minds and different ways that people think about filtrating, is that the right word? Or using filtration on their aquatic systems, be it their marine tank, tropical tank, their pond, koi pond, etc, etc. So I'm going to be speaking all about airlifts. Now, many of you may not have even heard about an airlift because no one really uses them. Now, there are a few ponds that do use airlift systems and they are very, very successful, but they don't really get the praise that they should really. And in present day, with the increased electricity prices, couldn't be a better time to be speaking about these amazing systems. So I've actually got an airlift system running on the marine tank, and I believe I have the world's first airlift marine tank. If you want to correct me, or you can find a system that is a marine tank running purely on an airlift system, then please link it down below, because I've scoured the net and I cannot find any marine airlift systems. I couldn't even really find any tropical airlift systems as well. So we're going to head over to the marine tank and talk about them in a little bit more detail. So first of all, let me explain to you what an airlift system is. I'll probably put a few pictures on the screen throughout the video to show you some different methods that airlifts are used. Essentially, you are putting water from one place to the other. You're going from your filter to your main system, your tank, your pond, whatever you are keeping, so to say. And the airlift is using air to travel that water from place A to place B. So you're using this air to flow the water back through a system as you would commonly do with a pump. However, instead of using a pump which has a spinning motor to push that water back in, you are actually using air bubbles. Now, if we can get the air bubbles to work in a certain way for us, then we can use them to our advantage in many different ways. So firstly, as you may see in the back corner, although it is really hidden, I have an internal filter that I've built myself. The water travels over the weir into this filter system, this all-in-one filter unit, and then the air goes up a pipe and travels back into the main system, the main tank. So it goes from part A back to part B. So to get the air bubbles to work in a suitable way for us, we need to create a closed environment, and this is perfect to use a tube. Now you can use different diameter tubes depending how much air you are pushing through that tube, but for instance, let's say you have a 4-inch tube. So a 4-inch tube, just similar to a gutter that you would have on the side of your house. The air stone would be in the bottom of this tube, and when you turn your air pump on, that air rises. As the air is in a contained space, generally if you have an air stone in a tank, you'll see the bubbles flowing over the surface of the water and sort of rolling around. But as you're keeping that air in a contained space, you then have some head pressure. Now, depending on the size of pump, the size of air stone, how many litres per minute you are pumping through the air lines, we can create different levels of flow. So if we are using a large pipe with a large air stone, we will get quite a lot of head pressure and head movement as that water rushes to the surface as the bubbles pull it up through that pipe. Now, if we use a smaller diameter pipe, we can get a higher head pressure, and if we use a larger diameter pipe, we can get more of a flow through the pipe. And now trying to combine the two, working with different size pipes, different size air pumps and different size air lines, can sort of find that happy medium that is perfect for your system. So essentially the water is being pushed up that pipe with the air, and then instead of going directly up, we put a T-piece or a elbow, and then we can direct the water in whichever flow region we want to send it into. So if I have the straight pipe with a right angle facing that way, the water will rise up and be pushed out of the pipe. And essentially that's what's happening in the back corner. Now I may also overlay some different pieces of stock footage that I have of the tank to sort of show that airlift in situ. So that is the airlift I have on my marine tank, and you can use the same style on a pond. For instance, if you have your gravity fed filter on one side of the pond, you can have your airlift pipe with your return, and then this can be plumbed into your filter system, and that can return the water back into the system. Now unfortunately airlifts only work on a sort of gravity fed system, so an all-in-one tank where you've got the back chamber as a sort of sump works perfectly, and that is what exactly I've imitated here. You may have seen my top view Ranchu pond outside, and that has got those internal filter boxes. They are currently on a pump system, but if I wanted to, I could convert that into an airlift system. Now you may be asking, well, why doesn't everyone use this system? And there are many reasons why. Firstly, most people do not have their tank or they do have their pond at ground level or below ground level, so that is absolutely an appropriate application, but most people do not have their aquariums sitting on the floor. Normally they are on a cabinet being filtered with a sump or a canister filter in most cases. Now an airlift system doesn't have enough head pressure to be able to lift the volumes of water at the speed you require it at to sort of a meter, 1.2 meters from the cabinet up over into the tank. And that is why the general application in the aquarium industry isn't used. However, if you have a all-in-one system like the Fluval Spec or the Fluval Evo, these are basically gravity fed systems. Through gravity the water goes through the weir, through the filtration system, and then is pumped back. But you could, for example, use an airlift on this system, although it would probably be a little bit fidgety and it's not quite appropriate on a tank of that size. So now comes the next question: why on earth would you use an airlift? What benefits does it have? And here I feel is the really important part to an airlift. Now airlifts use air pumps. Air pumps generally are far lower wattage and far lower power than a commercial pond pump or aquarium pump. So essentially I can get around the same volume of water turning over from my filter system part A into the main tank part B as I can with a pump for around approximately half the wattage, which is absolutely great because it means it saves me money. Now, not only does it save me money, it also has many other benefits. Firstly, the air pump is the only moving part in the system, and that is external from your aquarium, which means maintenance is super easy. If the pump is not working properly, it's easy to disassemble. No wet hands, no messing around in the tank. It's easy to switch in and out for a new one. Generally, I find aquarium pumps sometimes slow before they stop, but often they will just stop completely when there is a problem with them. Now I find with air pumps you get generally the opposite. Generally the flow slows down dramatically before the pump breaks. Generally the air pumps don't just stop working like a propeller pump would when something gets lodged in it and caught in the rotor, or there's too much build up and it doesn't have the generative force to be able to spin. But whereas I find with air pumps, you can sort of see when they're starting to break or slow down. And as I mentioned, they are external from the aquarium, so maintenance is nice and easy. Now generally I also find the initial purchase price, an air pump I find is not dramatically but slightly cheaper than purchasing an in-powered centrifugal pump that you would have in your aquarium or pond. And generally I find that they're quite, as I said, easy to maintain but easy to pick up as well, and get sort of a good discount in comparison to buying a pump that you would have inside the water. Now, not only do we have those benefits, but we also have many more. You may notice at the top of my tank I have the pipe sticking out the top, which is going currently into a jug with a little bit of brown liquid in. Now this is because my airlift system is providing a skimmer as well as the return to the system. So I don't need to be paying for a skimmer, which you would normally have on a marine tank, and I don't need to be paying for the power consumption because my airlift is serving both of those purposes with one pump. Now it may not be as efficient as a full-on skimmer, but as my system is going to be a low nutrient load, I am not keeping any really difficult hard corals, any SPS corals, any acroporas, any tenuous, etc. The skimmer is going to be absolutely ample on this system, and it is working really, really well. So not only does it double up as a skimmer, but it also has other added benefits. You can even use the skimmer on a freshwater setup, although it won't work very well. It will still provide a little bit of skimming potentially, but you might have to play around a little bit with that. So other additions are, this is adding oxygen to the system. A general centrifugal pump will pump the water back into your system, but it will not add oxygen. Now you could add a venturi onto the return of your system, which will pump in air and oxygen. However, this is putting back pressure on your pump and slightly limiting the life of it. But this air pump is doing exactly what it needs to do. There is no back pressure on it. It is just pushing that air through the airline and into the system. Now this is providing lots of oxygen and surface agitation and surface contact with those air bubbles and the water. And not only does it provide oxygen to the system, but it also is gassing off any CO2 buildup or any nitrogen from our nitrogen cycle. So the air pump is currently on this system is pumping in 30 volumetric litres of air per minute into this system. And all of that contact time, all of that rushing, all of the bubbles within that pipe is gassing off all of that CO2 and introducing oxygen from the atmosphere, not from inside the tank or inside your cabinet hood, but from our atmosphere into the tank, which is another real good added benefit. And not only does it add this oxygen and degas the CO2, but that will also in turn provide us with a bit of stabilization of the pH. Now the pH in the system for a marine tank needs to be ideally above that 8 range. 8.2, 8.4 is a good range for a marine tank, and whilst we're gassing off that CO2, we are reducing the impact of carbonic acid on our system. Therefore, we are slowly increasing the pH and maintaining that stability as well. So that is another added benefit of this system. Now, potential drawbacks with airlift. So I would say there aren't many potential drawbacks on an airlift. On a freshwater side, I can't really think of any off the top of my head. Potentially you don't get that hard pushing directional flow that you would from a pump. With a pump you can get directional flow and at high pressure, whereas an airlift is more of a general pushing flow, if that makes sense. Think of it if you're in a hot tub, when you're in the hot tub, you have jets that are firing that directional current at you. But when you're in a swimming pool, there is a bit of current, but it is not directional and there is not too much flow. Hopefully that is a good analogy for you guys. So you're not really getting that directional flow, and the addition of flow pumps, wave makers, etc. are very important, especially in a marine tank. But we need those anyway, so I don't feel like this is a major drawback. And in a pond, generally you're not looking for that high current turnover with koi or fancy goldfish, so I don't see that as a true negative. Now potentially if you have a saltwater airlift, which obviously I mentioned I haven't seen anyone actually with apart from me and this system, you may potentially get a bit of salt creep around your cabinet or tank. And to be honest, I haven't noticed any salt creep just yet, but depending on how you produce your system, that could potentially be a negative. You may get a little bit of splashing, which will lead to that salt creep around your system. But as I mentioned, I have seen no signs of that yet, and this tank has been set up for quite a while. Although it's still quite new, it has been set up for quite a while. So I hope I've covered everything on airlifts. I haven't gone into too much detail on how I set mine up, but hopefully I've given you a bit of a generalization on how they work and how to set one up. If you want to set one up yourself, you will need just a few things. You will need an air pump, some air line and some air stones as well, and you'll have to play around with the pipe diameter and the height dependent on what system you go for. I will say that this system has a 1.5 inch solvent weld pipe with a few T's and angles in there. It is all just push connected, so if I ever need to take it out or clean it, it comes apart super easily and I don't even need to get my hands wet. So hopefully this video has been helpful. Hopefully it's not been too boring but quite informative, and maybe open some of your eyes to think about what you could do for your next system. If I was to build a pond again or build one myself, potentially I would consider using an airlift as well, for all of those positive reasons I mentioned in this video. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to have your aquarium or your fancy goldfish setup featured on the channel, make sure to drop a comment or send me an email at fancygoldfishfanatics@gmail.com, and we can get your setup on the Tank Tool series or the Rate My Tank series. So as always, thank you for watching. Remember to keep those water changes up, and happy fish keeping.